Well, thank you very much, Simona. I have some questions, but I don't want to spoil the party, so if you are having any questions, please... Well, then, I mean, I can start the discussion. I'm very, very glad about this. First of all, the funding of the of COAX. You mentioned that it was a one-year project,
yes.
And who was funding it?
The funding came from the Institute of Classical Studies.
Okay.
Yes, it was a short-term, obviously a one-year thing, but it was internal funding from the Institute.
But you want to now you want to broaden up the audience with legal institutes and stuff like this.
Yes,
making it more or less a common tool for importing series into online public access catalogs, something like this.
Yes, that was the idea. We haven't been successful in all of our efforts. Let's put it that way. But we did talk to several institutes, other institutes in the School of Advanced Study, including the Senate House Library, the Advanced Legal Studies Institute, the Historical Research Institute, the Warburg Institute, which actually shares a catalogue with the Classical Studies Institute, etc. And they're all on board because it turned out, something I did not know at the beginning, that in each of these institutes and libraries, there's one, maybe two people trying to do the same thing with their own discipline, struggling and kind of sobbing in the corner, why is this my life? But we'd never met each other, we'd never actually exchanged knowledge or experience or anything like that. So we did meet, that was progress, and we had a few very useful discussions. Nothing has materialized in terms of a common sort of project for the time being. But ideally, that's the end result would be for us to come together and figure out what to do with open publications, not only serials but monographs as well, because they're gaining power in not only in digital humanities, but in all of these sort of more traditional disciplines as well. And there's not currently a common strategy of approaching open access cataloguing at all. So that's definitely something to be developed further. But so far, that's where we are at the moment.
This leads me to my second question about the monographies, because as we know, every discipline has its own publication rules or systems. Some are more into monographies, some others are more into journals, and as well we have a critical mass of electronic document servers where open access publications are stored. Sometimes retro-digitized. For example, I'm at the moment retro-digitizing more than 100-year-old publication serials on the Greek Christian authors, which we will put then on our eDoc server, because we have found, okay, we have some volumes are already online, archive.org, for example, but there is no complete overview of the whole publications. Yes, monographies are becoming more important. So would it be useful as well to say, okay, we have here in Germany we use the Bielefeld Academic Search Engine as a meta search engine for open access publications. Would it be useful to use something like a meta search engine to enrich the catalogue with these monographies?
Yeah, well, one thing that I didn't mention but probably should have, and thank you for bringing that up, is the institutional repositories. So every institution is supposed to publish their staff's work in their own institutional repository. Now, from that repository, it can go into a national library, into all sorts of other things. But these repositories, open or closed, are not really connected to each other or to anything else much. So a lot of the stuff, including the open access stuff, is just hidden, because if you don't know to look into this university's database, which is bespoke, there's no export of library metadata more often than not, you don't know it exists, right? So that's exactly something that we were trying to sort of get people to talk to, if not fund us immediately, but just to get into, into the heads of people, that that's something useful to do. Because as you said, things are sort of separate. They're not always very clear on the access rules as well. Because you say open access, but there are various flavors of it, right? Which is not always made clear to you when you go online to look for something. So a concerted effort into making that clear and connecting all of these databases with a shared search engine. I know that will be technologically complicated to do, but not impossible. But the other thing that I found out when I talked to the other institutes at the University of London is that every library had a slight variation on the way they used MARC as a format, which is also something to think about. I mean, I kind of made fun of MARC because it was complicated to figure out what to do with it, but it would be the same with the XML flavor of it, right? There'd be slight differences when you and I catalog something. And that's also something to think about, to make it flexible enough, not completely rigid, and this is the only category you can put a subtitle in, right? Because that wouldn't always be the case. To make whatever the search engine would be flexible enough to allow that variation, but structured enough to be useful to anybody. And that's complicated, and that wouldn't take 1 or 2 people to figure out, definitely. So I'd be much in favor of a sort of bigger discussion of this, including monographs. Yeah.
Well, I have to protect the librarians now in one case because I mean, you know TEI XML quite well, and if you have one historian or philologist transcribing, or 2 philologists describing the same document in TEI, you will get 2 different TEI documents. So it is something which is more human than just only librarian. More questions?
One simple question: what do the librarians say? Are they happy with the metadata that you scraped from the net? I know that librarians can be quite picky.
But that's why we like them.
Yeah, is it enough, or what are the responses?
Depends on the source material. Sometimes it's enough. Most times it's not enough, but it's something. It's something to create a new record so that you can at least say, I have maybe 2 sentences about this journal, but it does exist in my catalogue, and from then on I can go on and populate that. So they have been very sort of open and very helpful to me, I have to say. The amount of data that they've gotten out of it is not optimal, but they're happy to get more than nothing. Again, it's the balance of things. So, yeah.
Need once more? You mentioned in the beginning that the goal was to enrich the catalogue of the library with these titles. Now, this is quite an interesting story because, or way, because I'm always thinking, and I'm struggling with myself, whether electronic documents should be part of the library catalogue. Did you discuss it in the beginning with the librarians?
We did.
Whether they have as well other models? Because I'm thinking more of a, let's say, meta search engine, which is searching first of all the OPAC with the traditional books, then as well the licensed stuff like JSTOR, for example, in best case, and then as well the open access stuff. So was there a discussion in the beginning to?
Yeah, that's something that's incorporated into the search engine, more or less. So I don't have any power over which titles are prioritized. However, we don't host. Excuse me. We don't host the PDFs or whatever else these things are in. We only give the links to the original record. So there's no, we don't need more server space, let's say, to have sort of, not physical, still electronic copies of these things, but we don't host the content of them. We only link to it. If we digitized something, then we would have both. But in these cases, we only point to where it came from with the URL that we get from the stuff. Now, how we're going to prioritize the results, something we're thinking about now. But I think that's already incorporated into the catalog itself, and I doubt I'm going to be touching it.
I would like to have to ask a question to the students, because you said that this is very useful for the students to get the information and to get the resources. Now, you are studying, and how do you get the content? Do you look in at your library's OPAC, or do you only use Google, or how do you come to content?
I mostly use the library actually here at Bodard University, and at the beginning of my study I was using pretty simple just Google. I just looked up the topic and put PDF at the end to find some more serious text, but the most website I use is Primos, which is like looking around at Humboldt University libraries.
And so license stuff, which is...
Yeah.
So would you think that a project of this would be useful as well for...
Definitely, but every student should like need a lesson how to use it actually.
That's a good point, because I learned more about our catalog when I sort of started poking through this stuff. To see how it was constructed, and then to evaluate the search results that I was getting. So that's completely true.
I have some more questions on my
Over wine!
Yeah. You can make it fast.
The 6 lucky people that get a wine glass.
There are only 6 glasses.
Take them all.
You need to get the bottle. You said that you did some data curation on the stuff you got from HWOL. Did this data curation go back to HWOL?
Yeah, they haven't looked at it, but yes, it is.
Yes. Okay. Because maybe it would be a little bit stupid if you use the data curation and then it doesn't go.
No, I mean the correction wasn't massive in terms of me populating their records with more stuff. That's something that they do on their own. But it was mostly sort of looking at the thing, surveying the thing, saying this is a useless record, this is a duplicate. It was that kind of thing. And then I got into the transformation bit, which I had to learn how to do before I did it. So I didn't have the time to add information to their records. It was mostly weeding out the stuff that I didn't need for my work. But they get the whole thing in the end, because I started from their code. So the whole thing will be public anyway, and they'll get a special copy with a smile.
So the data curation came before the transformation of the JSON to Mark?
Yeah.
And so you had still the JSON files, and then you corrected the JSON files, and they got the JSON files back.
Yeah.
Why didn't you use RDF?
Oh, because my stuff wasn't in RDF. No, because I looked at how to transform things in various ways, and I thought for the messy stuff that I've got, the ideal case was the JSON files. The HTML was a complete disaster, so that's a whole, writing 7 different parsers to get, things from vaguely similarly structured HTML pages and all of that. That was a whole different sort of thing. But from the stuff that I looked at, and from the ways that I saw other information science people approaching library problems, that seemed to me the easiest to do and the fastest to learn in the time frame that I had. Because with Python, I could do something with the HTML, I could also do something with the JSON, I could also serialize the mark in mark XML immediately as well. So it seemed to me at the time, and I still think so, that was the fastest way to do at least a fraction of what we set out to do in that time.
Any more questions? Well, thank you very much. Then I have the closing words to very fast. Thank you very much for having, for giving us this, for me at least, a very, very interesting presentation.
Thank you.